Okay, so in this video we're going to talk about goal setting and achievement and self-image. And as I mentioned in a previous video, I got introduced into what was called Psycho-Cybernetics, which is a book and it's a bunch of research that was compiled by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, who was actually a cosmetic surgeon way back when cosmetic surgery was really brand new. It was in its infancy stage. He was one of the first of 12 cosmetic surgeons in the United States. And what was interesting was he actually created or started researching and studying self-image and how a lot of the scars, like he got into cosmetic surgery because he wanted to help people that had like disfigurements from car accidents, for example, or injuries of some sort that would cause, external scarring and disfigured faces, or things like that, or as well as maybe birth defects and that kind of stuff. And he wanted to help people to improve their self-image and the quality of their life by repairing these physical deformities or scars that they had. But what he found, which was super interesting, is that a lot of the times he would repair the scars and fix people's faces, for example, and they would still have their quality of their life wouldn't improve. And so he started digging into why, and he found out that it was really a self-image thing. It was not necessarily just the physical scars, but it was the effect that the scarring had done to them mentally. So they had mental scars and personal self-esteem scars, right? So personal image scarring that was difficult, and no amount of plastic surgery would repair that. And so he started studying and learning about what causes the self-image, what causes people to have these ideas of who they are and what their defects are or what their shortcomings are, and how could he help to improve that. So he already had the physical side of it down through his training as a medical professional in cosmetic surgery, but how could he also improve it? Besides doing that, if that wasn't enough, how else could he improve the quality of the lives of his patients? So he started looking into this and studying and experimenting with even with his own patients on mental exercises on how to improve self-esteem and self-image. And it's amazing what this gentleman, what Dr. Maltz figured out with Psycho-Cybernetics, and it really is. He's been called like the grandfather, or where the birth of personal development really began was through Psycho-Cybernetics. So I would encourage you to go check out the new Psycho-Cybernetics. You can get it on Amazon. It's really, really great, and that's what I really got introduced to first for this goal setting and achievement and creative visualization stuff, was because of that. So, but what's interesting is our self-image is basically our subconscious mind. So it's an idea that we have of who we are and our talents and abilities, or lack of talents and abilities. And by default, the majority of us, and I know I mentioned this before, but this is like part of the human condition, that the bulk of us will focus in on our shortcomings. And over time, we develop this self-image that we carry around with us, that we project all the time in all of our actions. And it's not something that we consciously think about. It's our subconscious, because our subconscious has been programmed based upon our self-talk, like the things that we say to ourselves when we have our internal dialogue, and the way that we say it we constantly are inputting information into our subconscious, because our subconscious is nothing other than a recorder. It doesn't reason, it just records. Our conscious mind is where reasoning occurs, right? That's where we filter all of our sensory input. So all the sensory data that we get from sight and sound and touch and taste and smell, all of those things are first through our conscious mind. We filter it, right? And then we decide, we make a memory, or we perceive things, right? We have a perception of things. We don't just observe, we perceive. We kind of put our own slant on, based upon our emotions and our environment and all of that, so that when it enters and is recorded into our subconscious mind, it's recorded as we perceived it. Not necessarily as it actually was, but how we perceived it. And so a lot of our negative self-talk and things like that gets incorporated into that, and over time it develops this self-image that just we carry around like a sack of bricks on our back that kind of it's limiting self-beliefs. And that's something that is part of our self-image. And there's a way that we can reprogram all of that. And the reason I'm talking about this self-image as part of goal setting and achievement is because I mentioned this in the previous video, but a lot of times when we go to set out to accomplish a goal, and to set goals and to accomplish those, we get really excited about a new opportunity or a goal or an idea that we have. And some of us even take the time to write it down, right? I didn't used to do that. I used to think, oh no, I know what my goal is. But it absolutely is critical, guys, to write down your goal and define it, and then start trying to, write down the goals as if it had already been achieved, and then start working your way back and trying to figure out what are the major milestones that would need to be accomplished in order for me to reach that goal. Then you take those major milestones and you break those down. So you could think of it as, let's say you wanted to have a specific goal set and achieved within 6 months. Then what you would do is think about that goal being achieved. And then you start thinking backwards from the date that it was achieved, 6 months from now. What would you have to do at month 5 to accomplish it by month 6? And then what would you have to do at month 4 and month 3 and month 2 and month 1? Then you could break those monthly goals down into weekly goals, and then weekly goals into daily goals, right? And that's kind of how a lot of goal setting programs are set up, right? That's what they teach, is how to break down your goals into achievable steps. But the problem is, and this is where I think most goal setting courses that I've gone through really fall short, is the limiting self-beliefs that we attach or place into that whole practice or exercise of writing down goals. Is we may be really excited when we first have the idea, and we're real enthusiastic about it, and we start to write it down. But as we're writing this stuff down, and I know you guys can relate if you've ever gone through this exercise of doing this, I know you can relate, or at least the vast majority of you can. You start to write all this stuff down, and the internal dialogue starts about how you aren't going to be able to achieve that goal. Doubts, fear and doubt starts to rise up, right? And that's from our subconscious mind, guys. That's from the limiting self-beliefs. That's from the negative self-image that we've been carrying around, that we've just automatically programmed into our mind without even consciously thinking about it. We've programmed this into our mind so that when we start to write down these goals, the fear and doubt starts to creep in, and we start second guessing. And we start telling ourselves how it's not really possible that we're going to achieve that goal. And so without belief, how can you achieve any goal? Like, first you must believe, then you can achieve, right? So it starts with belief. You have to have belief and faith. Faith is acting on the belief. So not even knowing how it's going to happen, you just know that it will, and you trust in the process. So goal setting and achievement really should begin with self-image, because our self-image really directs our actions and our thoughts at a subconscious level. And so if you have no belief, or if you allow fear and doubt to rise up, then are you truly ever going to commit to that goal setting plan that you developed? And that's typically where people fall short. And that's why they don't usually end up following through, is because they start convincing themselves how it's not going to work. So the good news is, guys, this can all be changed. This can be reprogrammed. And I mentioned this before, and we're going to get into this a lot more in the creative visualization and shadow boxing section, but a lot of what we can do is to overcome this negative self-image and these limiting self-beliefs is start to reprogram our subconscious mind by recalling past successes. So times that we have accomplished goals that we set out to achieve, times that we've received praise or awards or accolades for things that we've been able to accomplish. And so times that we felt proud and successful and we've been excited and happy. And if we start to recall those kind of memories, then we can transfer those emotions and that enthusiasm and that excitement over to the goals that we have set in the future. Our future is directly tied to our past through our self-image. Let me try to explain. The reason I say that is because typically when we start to think about something that we want in the future, some goal that we want to achieve, we start to recall past memories and similar situations, maybe not the same goal, but other times that we had set goals And for the most part, we usually default to the negative stuff, where we weren't successful. It didn't work out because of this, because of that, whatever the reason is, it doesn't matter. That's usually what we default to. We start thinking about all the reasons that in the past we failed. So what makes us think that we're going to be able to do this thing in the future? And so our future is directly tied to our past through our own self-image. So if we can learn how to improve our self-image and eliminate the negative self-talk and remove those limiting self-beliefs and start focusing in on the positive, and kind of we started with the attitude of gratitude, right? That's one of the ways to start getting your, priming yourself or putting yourself in a position where you can start to locate those feelings of pride and success again, right? Those feelings of joy. If we're able to find those feelings again, rekindle those feelings, recall past memories of successes and things that we have to be proud of, times that we felt confident and courageous, we can start transferring those feelings into our future goal, into our idea of who we are to be able to accomplish that goal. And so typically fear and doubt creeps in, and we think about our past failures, which cultivates fear and doubt. But what I'm saying is, for goal setting and achievement, the key to setting goals and actually achieving them has to do with cultivating courage and confidence, to cultivate courage and confidence. And the way that we do that is through creative visualization and also shadow boxing, which is a specific technique, and we'll talk about that later. So I just wanted to have a quick video talking about goal setting and achievement and self-image, and why the self-image is so tied into goal setting and achieving those goals or not achieving those goals. And it has to do with how we think about ourselves and the feelings and emotions that we attach to those thoughts, right? And so if we have negative thoughts and negative emotions and negative feelings, then we're going to be cynical and we're going to talk ourselves out of being able to accomplish those goals. But if we flip it and we start thinking about our past successes and times that we had to be proud of, and we think about our attitude of gratitude, right? The things that we had to be grateful for, we recall our talents and our abilities, we start thinking about what was once impossible but is now easy. Let me explain what that means. Think about one of the times in your life where you were going to learn a new skill. So a lot of you that are probably watching this are online entrepreneurs, because that's who my audience typically is, online entrepreneurs. So think about anything in your online business, or maybe you're just starting out, but think about something that you thought was once impossible, but you just started doing it, and you started learning and trying it and practicing and going through trial and error, and over time you developed the skill. Right? You cultivated that skill and developed it to where now it's easy to you. So once impossible, now easy. Now think about that. Why don't we attach or assign those same types of thought patterns to the goals that we set for ourselves? Where if we think about a goal, which may be overwhelming at first sight, right? At first thought, it's overwhelming. But even if we go through that practice of breaking it down into major milestones, maybe monthly milestones, weekly milestones, and daily tasks, then we start drafting this thing out. And even if it's overwhelming, a lot of times we can put it to where it's more manageable. But if we still have that fear or that doubt and our limiting self-beliefs come through, which they often do, then we start to talk ourselves out of how we're going to be able to achieve that. But if we can start recalling past successes and times where things were once thought impossible but are now easy to us, then we can start to reinforce to ourselves the fact that we're going to be able to, what may seem impossible now is going to become easy as long as we practice that same process and that same method. So goal setting and achievement is directly tied to self-image. And we often don't reach our goals because of limiting self-beliefs. And we have a way, fortunately, to reprogram that and eliminate limiting self-beliefs. And we're going to be talking about that more in creative visualization and shadow boxing. But next we're going to talk about meditation and breathing, which will be a short video, but it's very important. So we'll see you in the next one.